Hey everyone, it's sysadmin Sean, and today in Desk to Data Center, we're doing something a little different. We're doing change control, so stay tuned. All right, change control. So you might be asking, what is change control? And I'm here to explain what that is. So let's say you've got your environment set up like we've done. We've got a domain controller, we've got networking equipment, we've got a Linux box running GitHub or GitLab. We have some servers, and we have some stuff we're ready to start making changes on. But the problem is it's in production now. So we need to let our users know, hey, we need to make a change. We're making an adjustment to the system somewhere. And that's where change control comes into play. You have to write a change control request form. And this request form will usually go to a change control committee or a change control board. They will discuss the change and either approve it or deny it or delay it, depending on what the change is, when you want to make the change, who's going to make the change, why you're going to make the change. All of those questions need to be answered. So a very basic change control request can really just kind of be the 5 W's: who, what, where, when, why. Then you also need how. You technically need a second who. And we'll go over why we need those as we go down the list. So the first one is, who is going to make the change? They need to know who's touching the equipment, for this change that you requested. So usually if you're writing this and you're the one that's making the change, you put yourself, right? The next question is, who is going to be affected by the change? So this is I need to let these people know we're making a change. This much stuff is going to be affected. So this could be anything from no one to entire environment. End users, other IT folks, everything. Next is, what is the change? What are we fooling with here? What are we making an adjustment on that we feel we need to make an adjustment on? And for this case, we're going to use DHCP. So we have currently set up DHCP servers on our Cisco 3900. That works great, but when we start adding more and more network switches, we don't really want to keep DHCP on our networking gear. You might say, well, why, Sean? And I'll go, well, I was told not to do it, so I don't do it. I want to get more towards centralized DHCP, and there are networking devices that can do centralized DHCP, and that's awesome. We don't have one. So we're going to use either a Windows or Linux DHCP server to centralize DHCP, right? That is our change. Why are we making this specific change? We want centralized DHCP, better management and logging of the DHCP scopes. That's totally a perfectly good reason on why to make a change. You want better logging, you want better insights into your DHCP, and you feel like you're going to get that via the change you're going to make. That's what we're going to go with there. Where is this change going to happen? So this is obviously going to be something in our central data center, but you might not always have a change in your central data center. You might need to make a change in a network closet. You might need to make a change at a remote site. You might need to make a change, in a giant area with a bunch of wireless APs. Maybe you're having your wireless system replaced, so wireless is going to be down. Well, you need to say which floors you're doing on which days and how that's going to affect the Wi-Fi service for that building and those end users, those customers. When are we going to make the change? So this is important. So when are you going to make the change? This is important. You're going to have varying levels, or at least you should have documented varying levels of changes, whether those are non-disruptive, minor disruptive, major disruptive, total disruption. So, no disruption means you're going to change something so small and so insignificant, no one's going to notice. That's stuff like branding changes, or maybe you're adding storage space to a file share. No one should notice that because you're just giving it more space. You're not taking anything away. You're not touching any existing data. That's non-disruptive, but it should be documented as change. Minor inconvenience would be a single service outage. Major would be multiple service outages, or a large service outage, such as maybe DNS going down for some reason. You need to take DNS down, which, I don't even want to think about that. Maybe you're doing physical hardware migrations. You need to move something from one rack to another rack, and sadly, you can't do that without an interruption. Those are all possible changes. So those change levels dictate when you can usually make your change, because your change committee should also have multiple types of maintenance windows or when you can make changes. You know, during the business day, most of the time, if it's non-disruptive, I've never worked anywhere where they care when you make the change. Sometimes it's more of a do it after 5 and we know it's not critical. So even if it's broke in the morning, and then you have standard maintenance windows, or at least you should have a standard standing maintenance window, because if you don't, when are you going to be able to make major changes? No one's going to give you the okay to make these changes if you don't do it during a standard maintenance window. One of the places I've worked at, it was every first and third Sunday. Another place I've worked at, it was every Sunday, but we weren't ever allowed to use them. They kept getting deferred by a team, which is really a pain in the butt. But it can't happen in your change control committee. And unless someone above the committee says, quit doing that, it's going to keep happening. But that was our standard maintenance window practice. Some people do Friday nights from like 6 p.m. to midnight. You look at your lowest utilization time frame, usually, and that is when you have your maintenance windows. And then lastly, you have an emergency maintenance window. This is when Chick was just having an emergency maintenance window. This is when you have a 0-day type vulnerability. There she goes. She's got to go make her change. Or something in your environment is so broken, you have to make a major change that is going to cause more of an outage before it fixes the initial outage that you had to begin with. That's when you use your emergency maintenance window if you don't have to immediately fix it. Emergency maintenance windows are usually in the middle of the week because it's a rush change and you need quick feedback on if you broke anything else making that change. And then sometimes you just have to make the change. It's not an emergency window. It's not a standard window. It's a, we're making this change. We'll write the change control doc after the fact. And then you'll probably also have a postmortem about why you had to make the change without a maintenance window. So when are we going to make this change? Well, we know we're affecting the DHCP service, which is going to be a major outage for at least some of our clients, because it depends on when they picked up their last DHCP lease. And technically they're going to have to get new ones anyway from our new DHCP server because their networking equipment's going down. So we'll pick our standard window, whatever that may be. We don't have that listed. And then again, why are we doing it? Boom, we want centralized DHCP. Now, how are you doing the change? This is your plan. This is your step-by-step guide. Now, this should be extremely detailed because the people in the change control committee, for the most part, should have a pretty good understanding of the change you're making and why you're making it. And they want to see exactly what all you're touching and what's going to be modified in some way. And this can be very detailed. So we're going to call this our very detailed plan of the entire change. But really our change is basically going to be like, we're turning DHCP off on the networking servers. We're turning DHCP on the Windows server. We're going to clear the lease table from the networking equipment. And that should make all of our clients touch the new DHCP server that is configured on the network and fix everything. You know, we'll have DNS pushed out and all that jazz. And it'll just, we just hope it works. That's why you lay these steps out. You say, we do this step, then we're doing this step, then we're doing the next step, so that you can show your course of thinking and where you're going with your change and how it's going to be finalized. And then another step you really need at the end is your rollback plan. What if your change fails? What if you make the change and for some reason you just can't get it to work? You need to give yourself a drop dead time frame of, we've made the change, we've given ourselves a little bit of a wiggle room to test things, and if stuff isn't working, we have to go back. We have to revert all of our changes. So your rollback plan is usually your detailed plan in reverse, and your detailed plan should have included things like copying all the configs off the network switches, so if you need to replace them back with the originals, you can do that, so on and so forth. It should also be stuff like verifying that the version of the config you copied off the network switch is the one that was managing the DHCP. It should include things like detailed information about all the scopes that are on the network switches that need to be on the Windows and verifying that you got them all before flipping the switch. These are all important parts of the detailed plan and also very important for the rollback plan, because maybe you need to turn off that DHCP server because it's not doing something right, reload all those configs back on the network switches so that they can do DHCP again. And you don't want to miss anything. You don't want to leave out a single network scope there, because then you've got a whole bunch of computers that can't get IP addresses, and that'd be bad. We'll call this a reverse of our plan. So that's pretty messy, but there's our basic change control plan. Fantastic, right? So stage 2 is going to be, this plan goes to change control committee. They'll sit there and look at when you said you're going to do it during a standard window. You'll probably put a specific date here. They're going to probably have you come into change control if you're not already a part of the change control committee and describe your plan, talk about it. And they're going to say, what do you think? Who do you think is going to be affected? How long do you think they're going to be affected? What's your outage window looking like? You get, for instance, 12 hours. Are you going to need all 12 hours? Can we put other maintenance tasks in here? Sometimes that's a yes, sometimes that's a no. For instance, maybe we make this DHCP change. If it's successful, then we're also going to allow the networking team to update firmware on all the network switches, because they also need to do that. It's not going to take the rest of the 12 hours. They're going to upgrade what they can, and then we're just going to call it a finished day. You want to try to get as much as you can in that's not going to be super overlapping. Maybe you do DHCP and maybe you patch a server or two, because as long as DHCP is working, you should patch no problem. And really, your server shouldn't be on DHCP anyway. So those kind of things need to come up. And then, other people are going to go, when are we doing this again? They'll look at the date and they'll go, well, that's, a week out from such and such. Do you expect any long-term issues regarding this change? And obviously it should be a no, but you never really know for sure. You could say, well, the worst case scenario is we might have to reboot some computers or other devices on campus that pull via DHCP, and they should pull a new address, and then we're done. We've verified beforehand that all of our devices can talk to Windows DHCP or Linux DHCP. Again, you did your due diligence before you were ready to make your change. You covered all your bases. That's a huge part of this, is them just making sure you covered your bases. If you didn't, then they'll go, listen, we need to defer this. You don't seem like you have all your ducks in a row yet, but you're really close. Verify this, make this notation, find out this information that we'd asked for, and then bring it back, and then we'll push it through. No big deal. Let's say you wanted to make this change and our environment. So you're on the change control committee. You know that I don't leave this equipment on all the time, right? So if the network switch is off and the server is on, networking will work, but I won't have, well, if the network switch is off, nothing will work. If DHCP is pulled off that switch right now without the DHCP server set up, those leases will be the only thing giving me access to the servers, the VMs on the server farm. So we have to make sure that one of our steps is that DHCP server is up and servers have been talking to it instead of the network equipment. That can get kind of dicey. So you need to make sure you can access everything without DHCP working. And you need to make sure that the stuff that really should never be on DHCP isn't on DHCP. Now, I don't have it set up this way. If I lose DHCP from that network switch right now, I will lose networking to some parts of this environment, as you know. So that would be enough for this change control group to say, you can't make this change yet. We're not configured in a situation where we can be down with DHCP and you still actually be able to finish your work. You missed this step. An easy quick fix would be, well, I'm going to set manual configuration entries for all the networking devices, because it's 3-4 devices, before I make the change. That way they're not using DHCP. And then when we convert over, we'll just start using DHCP again then. Boom, problem solved. But that's all important, and all of this needs to be documented and stored and saved, because you'll need to go and reference this guaranteed 2 years down the road. Someone will go, hey, why aren't we using network DHCP anymore? What happened? Someone will have forgotten that we had a maintenance window. We said we were switching over to centralized DHCP with Windows or Linux, and they just completely forgot. No big deal. It happens. And then you go, well, remember, we had that change request that came in 6 months ago. Here's the ticket where we did all the work and reference exactly why we did it and everything. That's why DHCP is not on the network equipment anymore. And they go, oh yeah, I forgot, my bad. But you want to have all of these documented. That way you can truly follow the history of your environment and see all of the changes you made. And of course, there's going to be hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, and you're not going to like looking at them, but it's going to be a really cool archive of how your environment, your data center's grown. That's a change control form. So I'm going to make a nicer one. You can do this via a ticket system, which I think is what I'll probably do, is download some sort of free ticket system and put in change control. And then we'll do this change. We'll write up this document. We'll do change control committee of me, and Chikawa can join in. She can approve or deny. And then we'll make this change. You can see the aftermath of that in maybe the next video or a couple videos down the way. But that's change control. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and we will see you in the next one.